AFC, we got Baltimore Ravens. They got an A in their draft. The Cincinnati Bengals got an A minus. The Cleveland Browns got an A minus, and the Pittsburgh Steelers got a B plus.
Some high grades for this division.
The whole division got better.
So what you're saying is, so the whole division got better, but according to this, the Bengals are still coming in last.
and the Steelers got better, but they're dropping 5 positions in the projected.
Yeah, we didn't talk about that a lot with the last one, and we'll post this. We'll post a spreadsheet up, but we took a look. Bleacher Report's 2020 end of season finish. They did a power rankings 1 through 32, and then they did post draft power rankings. I think that they were discussing the Pittsburgh Steelers. They had a 2020 finish at 9th overall, but then post-draft are 14th overall after having a solid free agency grade of B and B minus draft grade. I mean, I think Kyle hit the nail on the head. I don't know if we can parse too much on the actual grade and kind of just discuss what we think, because at the end of the day, I mean, all this stuff is kind of subjective. I don't know how you can say two people did above average unless they just thought all the people who passed them, were spectacular. Like they had somebody who passed them. They had the Buffalo Bills pass them, which, they had a pretty good offseason. But then they had the Cardinals pass them. So, I mean, we're going to talk about the Cardinals later, but, I mean, I don't think we should worry too much about it. But, I mean, I think the Steelers did a good job of, surrounding Ben with a little bit more talent. Chase Claypool is a good addition for them. They've done a really good job at identifying receivers in the draft. So, like, if they're taking somebody, like, they must see something. And we saw DK Metcalf was a similar receiver to Chase Claypool as far as what they can do well. And we saw the Steelers just say, okay, this is what you can do. We're going to ask you to do that. They did the same thing with Juju as far as run after the catch. They did the same thing as Martavis Bryant with having him be a deep threat. They know what these guys can do well, and they're going to ask him to do that.
Well, I think if you look, the best team in that division, FC North, Baltimore Ravens, the best just got better, right?
Yeah.
It's something that we've talked about here before.
Clearly.
When you don't have to reach for stuff, and you can actually be comfortable with what you're doing. They just sat back. They got Patrick Queen in the first, really talented linebacker from LSU. They just hang and they get J.K. Dobbins in the second, one of the top backs.
Yeah,
I thought he was better than Edwards-Helaire, and that's more of a feel thing for those two teams, I think, because they both were luxury picks more or less. But Dobbins is going to take over when Ingram's out. They got Devin Duvernay, who fits what they like to do with the receivers. He's going to take over that slot role, probably from Willie Snead. He's just a speedy receiver. And then you look down the list, they got Prosh, who's receiver from SMU, who's all right. But they just were able to add guys that made them deeper.
Right.
So when we talked about earlier, when teams are looking for starters, at this point down in that draft, they don't need to try and hit a gem. They just take the best guy. They took some D tackles, some guards, linebacker, receivers, and all of a sudden they're better again.
Yeah. I mean, one of my friends who listens, Jason, he's a Ravens fan, and he was kind of pounding the table for Patrick Queen when we were doing our community mocks. And originally we had Zach Bond, and Queen was a great pick, and it was a good second place. And their need in the interior, they addressed it with both Queen and Malik Harrison, who I really liked out of Ohio State. Jason was talking about he was a really big fan of the value picks that they made. Just kind of like you mentioned, like they moved around the board spectacularly. They have all the picks at their disposal. Like they do the same. I'm going to trade, multiple picks so that way I have multiple swings at the bat when draft day comes. And if guys hit, great. If guys don't hit, they had a lot of options.
How do y'all feel about what do you guys think about the value of a 4th round pick?
I mean, I think it definitely deals with what are the other picks do you have? Like, if you have a 4th round pick, but you don't have a second, or you don't have a third, or you don't have a 5th, 6th, or 7th, like it's a day 3 pick, but you definitely can find value there.
I think so. Do you think the Browns taking another tight end in the 4th round, should take them out of that A category, that A grade?
So I was
That's
just
a good
kind of
question.
thinking about the Browns. How much
Yeah.
pressure is going to continue to mount for Baker Mayfield? They had another good draft,
Right.
another good offseason,
Mm-hmm.
added
More weapons.
another tight end. I don't know where they're going to play all these guys. I'm sure Njoku is going to be out
Mm-hmm.
at some point. But Stefanski came from the Vikings.
Mm-hmm.
He was a guy who has been successful playing with multiple tight ends. I think what they're going to do is going to really help Baker. But they got better at the line again this offseason. I mean, if he doesn't have a good season again, up to what they're looking for, they may be looking somewhere else.
Call him a bust and let's move on. Call him a bust and let's move on.
Don't be a hater,
But
bro.
it's it's that franchise thing too,
I'll
right?
jump on that train.
Yeah.
Oh,
Like
man.
the Browns are so bad in general. Like, who's to say that he wasn't going to be successful anywhere or everywhere else but the Browns?
Right.
Like, they're so dysfunctional, and to think that guy, as good as he was in college, was going to be able to change everything. It feels like they've done a good job, but like when they actually start playing football, it's still the Browns.
Yeah. Well, I think Baker Mayfield did what he was supposed to do as far as like the bravado and the brashness that people don't really, feel is necessary at all the times. And I think he overdoes it sometimes, but like you actually had people starting to believe in that team. And when he had that really great run as a rookie in that offseason, people were really starting to believe. The problem is like you said, that they have to actually capitalize now. It's not good enough to believe anymore. He did his job in making people actually believe the Browns could do something. If he can't, and as much as I like him, like they will need to take a step back. If he crashes and burns this year, like clearly he's going to take a step forward. You would hope so.
Case Keenum.
Hey.
But like the other thing is this, like if the expectations were not so high early on, they went 8-8, 7-8-1 this year.
Yeah.
Like, history of that franchise says that's a good starting point.
Exactly.
But like they did so much this last offseason that when they just went like 500, it was like, oh, that's trash.
Yeah.
Well,
They're shredding
But
their stuff.
the last 15 years, that would have been something to be excited
they're
about.
throwing parades,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. But now all of a sudden we're looking to win the division.
Right.
Like, let's get above 500. It's only going to be year 3, but they put so much pressure on him with everything that they've done.
Yeah.
It feels like a bad half of a season, and Stefanski's going back to Keenum, and
And
That would be
to
crazy.
Jamar's point, though, I do think that does go into it. We're talking about all these teams. We're going to get to the 49ers later who, took their needs, moved around. The Broncos took their needs, got some quality players. Like, you didn't need a third tight end. Like, even if you utilize multiple tight ends previously, like you utilize multiple tight ends because you didn't have the receivers to do it. Like, clearly if you had 3 quality receivers, you weren't sitting one of them on the bench for a second tight end. Like,
well, they could have a cheerleader over there. Travis Landry, Odell's biggest cheerleader. His favorite things are cheering on Odell, trying to be Odell, and playing Pro Bowl skill competitions. He lives for that stuff. Playing winning football,
Pro Bowl
not so
dodgeball.
much. Yeah, but he can play some dodgeball, exactly.
Oh man, did you see him try to throw in that dodgeball competition though?
I'm tired of Jarvis.
Not quite.
Go
Not
catch a bubble
quality.
somewhere else.
Oh man, so I mean, I think we talked about it a little bit. The Bengals. I mean, they were just so bad that even though they had a good offseason, that they're still real bad. And that's okay. The Bengals are on the path that the Browns would have been on if they didn't get Odell Beckham and Baker wasn't running his mouth. Like
Yeah, he wasn't on all the commercials.
right.
He was just
He was on like 17 commercials.
He was on like 8.
Yeah.
At one point last season, he had more TV commercials running on TV than touchdown passes.
Oh my god!
And it was like week 7 or something
Yeah.
like that.
And
Like,
I-
not just like week 2, like week 7, he had more commercials running on TV than.
But it's one of those things. He's been so underrated his whole career.
Yeah,
Like,
but this is how that's
but
why he
like,
got there.
but like the Cardinals head coach just let him walk.
Yeah,
He's so smart. He just let this future Heisman winner walk.
right.
He went to Oklahoma.
Lit it up.
As a walk-on, still lit it up. Won the Heisman first pick, and all of a sudden he's like, "I want my due."
Yeah,
So I think that may have been part of it.
right.
But it's time to buckle this up,
Yeah,
get to work, and fix some of the stuff you've got to do.
yeah.
There's a big. I mean, we could rant about Cleveland for forever, but there needs to be a
Yeah.
big. Well, I've wanted to ask this, and maybe we can save this for another pod. But the statistics and analytics in football, like, do you think that has a place?
You know where analytics work? When you put 5 good linemen out there, and you play within your scheme and don't do too much.
Because
That's good analytics. Run the ball behind good linemen.
Sounds like a plan to me.
Yeah.
Sounds like winning football.
I sat in one of these meetings run by this guy at the Browns, and like,
Podesta?
yeah, they're super interesting, but at the same time, it's completely. It's so much different than baseball. Baseball's from point A to point B, and this person does this thing when the ball gets to him.
Mm-hmm.
A 98% chance it's going to go here. There is none of that in football. And like this guy was like, okay, well, Jarvis Landry, when you do a 12-yard out to him, he catches the ball 80% of the time
But
on third down. Like, okay, cool, but like
The
we
team
can't
also
just
knows
do
that.
that. Like, we
Well, like,
can't just
so
run a
the other
12-yard
team
out
also
every
has
third
that.
down.
like you
Yeah.
can't just 3rd and 12.
Yeah.
Jarvis, 12-yard out. Everyone
Yeah.
else clear out.
Yeah.
And
There's
No,
not
my-
Madden either.
And my thinking was all of these guys, all of the coaches at the level of the NFL, like this is all subconscious to them.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
They don't need the analytics in front of them to be like, yeah, I know Jarvis is really good at running 12-yard outs.
Right.
Like
You
that's
know,
why we
like-
built it into our third down plan.
Like
Yeah.
they don't take into account because like I've done a lot of game planning over the last however many years, but like you have to still practice all this stuff.
Right.
So like they don't know unless they're telling them what they should be practicing in their script stuff and all their, which they're not.
Mhm.
They're saying like on third down you should do this,
Right.
which is easy to say, but every coach already knows what they want to do on third down anyways.
Yeah, like I said, I think for me, the analytics in football, there's just too many variables, too many people, too many things happening every single play that doesn't happen in football.
You know
Or
what
in
it is
baseball.
though? It's nerds trying to get themselves onto the field, affect the game. Right? They're trying to do so much like, well, I've told them they should run that.
Mhm.
It's like, well, you don't know anything about this.
Well, I think
It's the same thing with baseball.
Well, I think when you look at basketball, Daryl Morey and the Houston Rockets kind of have it down a little bit more. They have kind of taken analytics and they've looked at like, okay, what are the possibilities of us scoring and what are the most efficient shots? If these are the most efficient shots, let's try to get guys that are good
Right.
at those things. Like if we think that to win a Super Bowl, we need guys that are good on third down. We should go get guys that are good on third down. That's quality use of analytics. Trying to say like, oh, we're going to throw it on this, 5-yard or 10-yard out. Like, you don't know what defense that guy's running. If the guy is standing on the sideline and it comes out, like, are you going to throw this 80%? And like, no, that's a pick six. Like,
Right.
oh man. All right. Well, good analytics are, trying to talk about the thing that you have for the podcast so you can try to stay on time